What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm your host, David Michael, and today I have a special guest. Thanks for joining us. Would you introduce yourself to the podcast audience and tell us about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's John Becker, and I'm here from Cincinnati, and I am the community organizer for Fresh Local Producers.
So you're a producer yourself?
I don't produce any originals. The most I've ever done was a mashup.
Okay.
Or, I produce mixes because I don't DJ on turntables. I DJ using software called Mixmeister, which is all laptop based.
I know Mixmeister. Okay, I haven't used that in a number of years, but I put together a mix or two with that.
It's ancient technology.
Yeah.
Speaking of technology, so
do they still update that and keep it up?
I mean, it works for me. I haven't had any hiccups.
Cool.
I've used it for like a decade.
So what's your stylistically, what are you into, music-wise?
Well, as I'm an artist first, that's how I got into doing Fresh Local Producers. And so back in the day, 5-6 years ago, I was performing as Big Electric, and Big Electric had a sound that was mostly like orchestral electro. If you think of like Justice or like Castlevania, artists of that nature, Daft Punk's Human After All, that type of stuff. But over time, tastes changed, and I started to take commissions and things like that. And so I sold out, I guess you could say, for Big Electric, and I did things for charities and for friends and just took on challenges. So after that, I just decided to do Fresh Local Producers to take the music of people who are friends that I've met over the years who are artists and have a platform to promote them on.
Okay, and that's sort of what brings us here today. I wanted to learn a little bit more about Fresh Local Producers and see kind of where your head's at with this, what you're trying to do with it, what you are doing with it so far, and just give us a little more detail. I mean, what's the goal here?
I don't know if I have a goal beyond people feeling like they have a place where they belong.
It's a great goal.
It's an ongoing goal because there's no terminus to it. So it's something where somebody of any level of expertise or experience on producing or DJing for that matter, but especially producing, want people to have an opportunity to connect with other artists, producers with producers, producers with DJs, DJs with DJs. But the point of that being that when I was coming up, I noticed that Cincinnati and maybe the industry in general, but it was very highly segmented, and I didn't feel that I could, for instance, socialize with one crew if I was with another crew. So there was a lot of territorialism and clicky claiming, and that may never change, and it makes sense too for the purposes of branding and for the purposes of establishing an audience. For instance, there's Bass Cult in Dayton, which you go to a Bass Cult show, you're probably not going to hear trance. So it serves a purpose, but I didn't want to be a label. I didn't want to be a crew. I just wanted to be a resource, a community resource for all artists of all genres to be able to share ideas and again, come together.
Okay, I want to get a little bit more into your approach and your philosophies behind this stuff, but exactly what does it consist of? Like well, first of all, let's address the local part. You're based out of Cincinnati.
Yes.
So what does local mean to you in this context?
The local radius, if you will, would be like 2-hour drive of Cincinnati for me. Okay. So that's, and the tagline is the best electronic beats in the Midwest. But beats is spelled like fresh local produce. So it's a vegetable, B-E-T-S. Yeah. And we have made a t-shirt run and it said, "Let us turn up the beat." That's a common expression, right. But we didn't coin that, but just the idea of the pun and the fun there. So it's a 2-hour radius of Cincinnati. So Dayton, Columbus, Indianapolis, Lexington, Louisville. There's a couple of friends we made in West Virginia, but just around Cincinnati because A, it's a place I want to be able to drive to, like here in Dayton, and B, it's a place where I wanted to establish a proximity, a physical proximity, so that people could come together and meet each other, and there's no substitute for that like we're meeting now.
So you're physically meeting people in person and getting them together face to face.
Yes, that's instrumental. It's what FLP is supposed to be. So we have meetups. So we have, for instance, next weekend, there's going to be an open decks party in a suburb of Northern Kentucky.
Okay.
People are welcome to bring whatever gear they have. And that's hosted by a guy who's a 20-year veteran named Scott Ruckus. So he has a residency and he's played all over Cincinnati. A lot of good minds to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions, but before I get into that, I do want to mention real quick for our audience, those of you on the YouTube audience hopefully can see the shirt that I'm wearing right now. This is, longtime listeners will recognize this as the midnight edition of the classic logo tee, which I only sell in the month of October. So definitely head over to passionatedj.com/merch and pick yours up while they're still around. We got a little bit of response from that last year. People like the limited edition version of the shirt. It's the classic logo. Those of you who have been around for a while will remember the horizontal Passionate DJ logo that I started out with. And every now and then I do a run of one of these shirts. So head over to passionatedj.com/merch and pick yours up. So with fresh local producers, what is it that when people are seeking this out, or when they find it, what is it that you're trying to get them to take away? In the spirit of collaboration, or are you trying to teach them something, or are you trying to learn from them? Is it building community? I mean, what are your kind of overall goals with that?
Sure. It's only been around for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And so it's still fairly new. I have a mission statement that I created, as well as a full manifesto, if you will. So everything you said, it includes that. It's very amorphous for the purpose of fitting into the role of whatever somebody wants it to be. So we've had a web radio show on the Inhaler radio station in Cincinnati, and then out of a station in Over the Rhine. We've hosted showcases where people will perform. We're hosting soon enough at the end of this month. We're hosting a roundtable beat cipher where people can come together and share ideas to create music. And then incidentally, we'll just have casual dinners, casual group get-togethers. So really, it's that concept of togetherness, that concept of belonging that escaped me when I was entering the scene. I want somebody who is in this region, who is new to it and interested in it, to feel like immediately there's a place where they can go to participate and contribute and especially learn.
This is great because this sounds very familiar. This is kind of like what I wanted for DJing when I started Passionate DJ. Is that kind of thing. Of course, this is a lot more locally focused, which I really like, because then the community gets a little more direct attention when you can kind of curate this, and plus you can meet in person and do all these things, and that's wonderful. Do you run into a lot of people, producing different ways, get all kinds of different software and hardware and stuff like that? I mean, is it the kind of thing where people are collaborating and learning from each other?
Well, so the thrust that I've found is helpful for that is that we have a weekly mix show. I guess I misused the word podcast. We have a weekly mix show on SoundCloud, and also Mixcloud, but that's a duplicative. What I'm trying to do with that is mixing together these local artists, local producers, music as a way of virtual introduction, as an intro, and then one of them featured as a guest artist. So it's their likeness, it's their music selection, it's hopefully their music, and a quick interview with them, like a Q&A, 5 questions of basic, who are your favorite artists, where are your favorite venues, just so that there's it resembles community building in a way that's much more casual and much more to me natural to kind of integrate all that together in that format. So that's been the thrust of it. But with the meetups, that's really the next step, to do that more frequently, to do that in a way that's accessible to people, and do that in a way that's of interest to people, and that's always the challenge.
So you've got, 50 or 60 of these mixes by now, right?
About 55.
And so what are you noticing that's like people's approach to making these? Because to me it would be obvious, because I'm a DJ show, so they would be putting together a DJ mix, but you're focusing on the producer. So are they still doing DJ mixes? Are you getting sort of live PAs, or are they compiling personally produced tracks? What have you seen with that?
So there's one instance where somebody recorded their set live from a furry convention.
Oh, wow.
That was pretty
Okay.
cool. It was Vander. There was another instance where this artist had songs that they had recorded and actually mastered from different mastering engineers. And she gave me those songs and I mixed them together for her with her approval.
Okay.
And then we released that. That was with Abby Weiss of Weiss Ensemble. And then most of the time, as I said, it's just my random selection of songs that, you know, are not hopefully too different from the featured artist. And then that's blended into with a vocal ID, like a watermark on the actual track. So you hear when the transition happens over to basically handing the mic over, handing the turntables over to that artist. And that making those mixes myself keeps me engaged as an artist, that it's interesting to me because I love to make mixes and I love to find those nuances that blend together. So not always DJs, not always EDM artists, but electronic artists. And that's the way that we approach it.
Has it all kind of centered around house, techno, drum and bass, that kind of stuff, or
everything? I mean, we've had everything from Vander was Melbourne house, Melbourne bounce. Sorry, Abby is trip hop, as she described it. We've had people who've played like Resonance. We've had people who play the sound camps at Lost Lands. I mean, the whole spectrum. So that's supposed to be an inclusive umbrella, and that's represented in that, you know, everybody who's an artist is welcome to do one, and I work with everybody to, you know, have that community there.
What's the is there an online presence? Is there like a Facebook group or something that people who are in the area might want to become a part of?
Absolutely. So everything that I've branded is just / Fresh Local Producers. Still working on like Instagram, potentially a website, but there is a Facebook group. It's just one of these things where I want the test to be relevance. I don't want this to be a place where it's only promoters promoting shows or people promoting things that are unrelated to the act of producing or DJing. What I really am hoping people will do in sharing that on Facebook or sharing that with each other is when they make those connections, that they're sharing their work product, that they're sharing what they've made, whether that be a mix or whether that be, you know, a clip of them performing somewhere, that should be a point of pride in empowering people to feel like what they're doing is worthwhile. And specifically, I can give you an instance that last night I was approached by a DJ friend who got his first gig at Astor, which is a really cool cocktail bar in downtown Cincinnati, brand new in one of the skyscrapers. And he said, I got a gig here. It's top 40. It's no big deal, but would love to have you come down and see me. And I said, every show matters. Every instance of opportunity matters. And so don't ever feel diminished that you're not getting the love and respect and encouragement that you deserve as an artist.
We talk about that on the show sometimes. It's frustrating for, you know, this is something that we run into in Dayton all the time because Dayton's kind of random. It's a crapshoot, right? Like you'll have one show and it'll just be a blowout. You'll have another show and nobody will show up, and it's kind of it's tough to plan what names you're bringing in, like you know, how much you're going to pay for talent and stuff like that. And it's frustrating for local artists to have to play empty rooms, you know.
For sure.
And we've all had to do it. And we always try to encourage the listener in the same way. Like, hey, these gigs matter because, first of all, you never know who's going to walk in. And it could be somebody that was good to impress, right? But also, every time that you're mixing in public, even if there's, quote, nobody in the room, you're gaining experience, you're learning something, and you're, you know, use it as an opportunity, you know, try something new out, see what that one track sounds like. I mean, there's always something
better speakers than your headphones or your monitors at home.
There's always a positive spin that, you know, and so many people just, I've seen people walk off the decks because nobody was there, you know.
It's a rehearsal in the sense of what you are going to be doing and conducting yourself in a professional manner.
Exactly.
So people who see that whoever that might be walking in the front door at any time, who see that the opener isn't conducting themselves with enthusiasm, isn't conducting themselves with a desire and a passion, they're a passionate DJ, a passion to be there in whatever kind of performance it is, that they are discouraged too easily, that they don't have the resilience and the wherewithal to stay, that they're not going to last very long. But because that's such an unnatural situation to be in that performance forum, that's why that encouragement is really essential. That without that, it's easy to feel like nobody cares, and why am I wasting my time doing this?
If there's one person on the dance floor and you shake their hand after the set and thank them, and you guys have a nice exchange, then you may have made a fan or a friend for life. You know,
exactly.
And I say that from experience. It's happened to me. You know, so it's really important. And I really like the very very hyper focused and very small kind of curated approach that you're taking here. Like these people within a certain radius who are producing music and need help is really cool. What level of experience do you see amongst your members?
There are amateur, quote unquote, amateur producers. I have heard their music and it sounds better than music I've ever heard before. And then there are people who are well marketed, but they don't necessarily have the polish, so they're lacking in that regard. So it's a symbiosis. You know, there's a yin and a yang to the benefit of, you know, for instance, a DJ duo. Usually I've seen one of them is more of the producer, wears more of the producer hat, and the other one wears more of the DJ or marketer hat. And together they combine with this super group or whatever it's called. But you know, that's really hard to learn and do all by yourself. And the expectation should not be that you'll be able to do that as a brand new artist, that comes from the course of a career over years of learning. And so when you're asking about the spectrum of types of artists, you're also talking about the spectrums of experience and familiarity with all these different DAWs, you know, digital audio workstations, all these different venues, all these different behaviors, all these different crews or cliques, as you might say, you know, how to behave. And so there's a very steep learning curve that I'm hoping that FLP will help to mitigate.
Do you see... What's your opinion on, I know I'm kind of throwing you under the bus because we didn't talk about any of these questions ahead of time, but do you see the overnight success? Is that a thing? Like, or is it always, like, do you ever see somebody who's, as a producer, because since you deal with producers, this is pretty relevant, because a lot of DJs will say, well, if you want to become famous, you want to get big bookings, start producing your own tracks and you know, just make a hit, right?
Right.
You know?
Easy enough, of course.
Is that what you're seeing? Is it like, does it come across as we need to, you know, somebody comes out with a hit and then suddenly they're rocketed up, or is it just grind? I guess I'm asking if you've seen any of that behind the scenes happen.
Yes, and so to answer your question about that grind is always there, and it should be expected. That nobody should think that they're going to be entering into a career where what they're doing is trying to make music that's going to be likable by broad-based audiences. That's entirely unpredictable. And so you can study certain trends and you can do your best to mimic, but what I've found that gives an artist staying power and endurance over the course of a long career is that they believe in themselves, is that they believe in what they're making and they do it for that love, that they don't do it to please others. I mean, that's definitely a component of it, but that their primary goal is to make music that is self-expressive.
In the business world, they say the riches are in the niches. Now, I hesitate to use the word riches when it comes to the music industry, but I think the point comes across, you know, kind of niching it down to find what you're good at and passionate about when it comes, you know, musically, sound wise, and then B, finding the other people that resonate with that sound. With FLP, are you curating the artist? Are you promoting the artist, or is it like a Q&A kind of situation? I'm asking for promotional tips if you have any, but I don't know if that's what FLP does.
Again, in the spirit of, you know, willingness to do anything, yes, that's something I'm trying to learn how to do.
Okay.
For FLP is to become an engine of growth in any regard for these artists, including promotion. But an example specifically to your point of what what that looks like would be when we did an event at Stage Door. So my friend Ben Goulart, who goes by Reticuli, he runs the Stage Door open decks, I think pretty much every Saturday night or something like that on a regular basis. And he allowed us to come up and curate the night and promote the night and brand it as an FLP Presents night. And so with that, one of the artists, my friend Barry Leonard, DJ Barry Leonard, he's a techno DJ. He came on and got us at his old radio station, it's the NPR station in Dayton. YSO. Yeah, YSO. That's what I was going to say. So we actually had an interview with his former program, YSO. And that's just another example of something I had never done before, just like today, stepping into a new experience and trying to be a rising tide that lifts all boats at the same time.
So that's great. So how do you choose which artists to bring in? That's got to be difficult because I know you've got more than 5 or 6 members that make great music. So
well, that's a great question. So to do that effectively, I think it's a combination of experienced and well-known artists with ones that are new and not so well-known.
Okay.
And I've done it in a way that's been disruptive. So there have been, let's say, somebody who's better known for scoring films, and his name's Eric Helmers. He goes by Ditech. So, Eric doesn't really play shows like that very often, but to have him on a bill with War Chief from Dayton, Nick Benavidez, who plays incredible music and produces incredible music and has his own YouTube channel. So there's just a lot of different iterations of promotion, iterations of experience that when combined, people can actually learn from each other.
So that's pretty interesting because I never really thought about it, but you have a unique challenge with the producer thing where a DJ, there are exceptions, but a DJ is almost always willing and able to be a public performer. It's kind of part of the job. Whereas producer it could go either way. Some people are DJ producers, some people do live shows, and some people just like to make music. Right. And so you probably run into a situation where people don't have a following as a performer, exactly. So you can't book them and expect 50 of their friends to show up like you can some DJs, right?
Right.
So is that, I guess that's kind of what you're doing, is kind of combining people who have a live following with those that don't, so that you can introduce them to the music.
Yes. So as an example, I think that particular show was last year at Pavilion in Mount Adams in Cincinnati, and that was an event where I think Nick and Eric performed, and then a Dirty Bird artist named Tom Reed was there as well.
He's one of our ambassadors.
Okay, so Tom Reed, so you know him well, and another artist named David Concepcion. So he's well known in Cincinnati for formerly Mint and now Gala Park, and so a place where the veterans are mingling with the noobs.
Yeah. So that they can be noticed and where they otherwise might not.
Yeah, that's true. And it's hard for me to think of that. It's hard for me to do that because my angle is always what is to the benefit of the artist. And that is not necessarily to have a massive following. It may be to refine your craft. So there's no outcome that's necessarily desired besides facilitating the relationship to happen.
Do you run into situations where some of these producers don't really know how to perform or interact with the crowd or even know what a live performance would mean to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you do with that? Do you just not book them because they're not a good fit, or are you trying to find ways to make that work? I mean,
I think that actually is the solution, is to book them. I think the solution is to...
That's the reason you book them.
That's the reason, to give them an opportunity to flex or to shine and get that practice in. So there was a friend of mine, Matt Gonzalez, who now he goes by Dr. Rubix, and he has a collaboration dubstep trap kind of hybrid that has lots of plays, and he's getting great attention as a producer, but he didn't perform for a very long time as a DJ. And when we actually had that event in Dayton at Stage Door, he played, and he came out with a giant Rubik's Cube head, just like Deadmau5, you know? And so you couldn't tell he was a secret artist, and we brought him in through the back door, and it was really fun. And it was the day, I think, or the day after Avicii had passed away.
Okay, yeah.
And so he was the quote unquote headliner, the last person to play, I think. And, the rising tempo over the course of the night and the expectations of the livelier music to be played later in the evening, that at that very last set, you're expecting people who are there to be the most excited of all, no matter what the show is.
Right.
And so he arguably had a lot less experience than the other artists on the lineup, but that disruption was to book him last and to give him that quote unquote headlining opportunity.
This is great. So this is why I wanted to come and talk to you, or I wanted you to come and talk about this in person so I could learn a little bit more about what you're doing, because I didn't realize this side of it. So that makes me happy, because I kind of wish Tony was here today to talk about this, because he would have some insight. But, we talk a lot on the show about, let's say, superstar DJs that start out as producers and then they produce a hit, and then they're thrown on stages and then they don't know what to do. And that's where you end up with these DJs who play a mix CD, or if not so egregious as that, they just kind of mime their set and they've got it very planned out and they just slam mix from one to the other, and they're not really doing a performance in the same way. I mean, hyper programmed. Yeah. And there are reasons to do that and ways to make that sort of thing work, but it makes me happy as somebody who's into the DJing thing to know that you're kind of taking these artists who don't know how to perform live and making them figure it out. Sure. Before that potentially
trial
happens.
By fire.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think so many big name DJs never had that opportunity, and then old school DJs like to complain about how much of not a DJ they are. You know what I mean? Yeah. And not that this is a DJ approach, but it's kind of the same thing. A lot of people become famous as DJs because of their productions when they don't really know how to DJ, and it's not exactly their fault. That's the method of playback. That's the predominant method of playback for electronic artists, is by DJing or by doing something that resembles DJing. So you're live producing or something like that. Yeah. But it's not, I think it's important to distinguish that there's a DJ culture and there's a producer culture. And so they're complementary, and they work well together. Again, that symbiosis. But the producer's mindset is probably focused and structured in such a way that's a lot different than, or less fluid, you might say, than a DJ's. A DJ's always thinking about how does one song blend into the next. It's like comparing a DJ and a band. Yeah, kinda. Exactly. So a band might be a little bit more, each song is its own thing. And so to kind of teach them that mindset of when you're performing, people are expecting that, rather than, we had at that same show, my friends, Chungus, it was a duo. They did live production. Okay. They would tell a joke before their song. And then it would be joke, and then it would be song. And so that was a neat way to open the night to kind of get it conversational, but probably not going to work at like peak hour. So well, and not everybody is going to be, like if I get behind the decks, I might start at 121 BPM and end at 125 BPM or something. But if you have producers in there, they might be all over. It's just like a band. They might be all over the place, and it's just not, you're not going to have that same kind of flow, and that's not what they're doing. No frame of reference. Yeah. Or less frame of reference. And so to kind of bring them around people who are experienced DJs and are comfortable in that element, they can go, oh, this is kind of how it's supposed to be, or this is how it's kind of supposed to look in a nightclub setting. Yeah, there's a lot that DJs and producers can learn from each other if they lean one way or another. And, one often leads to the other. I started in production. That's what got me interested in DJing. And now I have a DJ brand somehow. It's just the way it's worked out. And I'm always learning things from my producer friends and vice versa, because it's the way that modern digital DJing is now. It can be very live remixy. And so it's not unlike what a producer might do if they're jamming out some patterns. You know what I mean? It's not totally different. I've got a machine studio back there behind you, and it's the perfect mix between the two. Yeah. It's, I can kind of go either way with it. So I think that, let me ask you this. And I know I'm kind of asking DJ questions now, but where do you think that DJing, or let's say electronic music performance, I feel like it's going in a more live remixy direction, but there's a certain point where it's almost like the uncanny valley of DJing. Like if you get too far into producing, then you're doing a live performance that's cheating because you're using loops and blah, 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 blah. But if you automate your producing too much, then I don't really know how to put this into words, but it's like if the more stuff you do manually by hand, the more respect you get to a certain point, and then it flips. Does that make any sense?
So it does. To bring this kind of back full circle, my biggest crowd as a DJ was opening for Pegboard Nerds at the Thompson House in Newport.
Okay.
Which is a venue right on the river. It's where the Tommy gun was invented. It used to be a mob hangout. It's a giant concert venue, bars.
Okay.
It's 2 floors. It's got the second floor is a balcony surrounding the floor. And my first mix of FLP doing those guest mixes was me. Okay. And I did it just to kind of get it off the ground. But I had a big crowd, probably 200-ish people. Not all family and friends, plenty of people I didn't know, so there were nerves there.
Oh, that's a great launch.
Yeah. And so I brought out my APC 20, and all that I did was resembling producing. I would engineer each song or edit each song so that it was able to be queued to the next. So I basically came up with a pattern of like 40 songs that I just queued up one after the other. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like DJing, there's not a lot of activity there. And what I learned was I was passing out CDs between transitions and stuff. And I was just trying to promote the event and talk to people in the crowd. And my friend who was running the night said, he brought the stage manager and said, tell John to get his ass back, behind the quote unquote behind the decks, because he doesn't look like he's doing anything. Yeah. And so you're absolutely right that there has to be some element of fiddling, some element of twiddling, fiddling, whatever it is, with your gear, with your controller, so that people know that they're actually not coming and listening to playback of something that's been pre-recorded.
I'm so glad you understood what I was trying to say there, because I turned that into word salad. But yeah, it's tricky, man, because you're never going to please everybody, right? So like there's, on the one hand, you've got the people that's like, oh, I get on my soapbox about real DJing all the time. What's real DJing? Mm-hmm. Well, it's when you have 2 pieces of wax and a mixer and you do everything by hand. And then you have people on the complete opposite end that call those people dinosaurs, and they use sync and quantize and everything else. And then you've got
the dreaded sync button.
Yeah, that's like the closer you get to production or live remixing, the less respect you get from DJs. It seems some DJs.
I can see that.
It's just it's a weird. I don't know. It frustrates me because it's like what. There's room for all these things, right?
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Of what FLP is about. How do you define your self-worth as a career electronic musician? And if it's external, and if it depends on how many followers you have, and if it depends on how much of a fan base you have and how many people you can bring to a show, you're not going to have a lot of self-respect. So I feel that that's where FLP fits in to motivate and inspire and to be a cheerleader and to be in your corner for that. But the consideration of the venue is entirely different. The consideration of the venue that's where there's a meeting in the middle. The venue wants you to pack the place. The venue wants there to be bar sales or whatever it might be. The venue wants there to be a profitable event for them. And so I'm looking to try to, while connecting these artists to each other as mutual resources, to also keep that in the back of their minds that, to get booked and to stop complaining about why don't I get booked, what can you promise the business owner? What can you bring to them? And
what's your value proposition?
What's your value proposition to them? And say, in a lot of cases, people are saying, well, I want to throw an event, but I don't know how, or I'm lost, or I don't know the right venue. And I think what you have to realize is if you're really invested in doing this long term, you have to share in the risk of hosting the event. And that is something that a lot of people don't want to do. A lot of people who are artists, they want to come, they want to play their hour set and then party or leave. Yeah. They don't want to be a stakeholder in the success of the evening. They will promote maybe the day of, but they won't take a vested interest and promote that from the day it's announced.
That's sort of the general climate we're in overall. Like you have to be your own cheerleader. You have to be you have to wear a million different hats anymore. It's this part of this whole gig economy that we found ourselves in, right? We're our own media companies and
right.
Social media managers and whatever, graphic designers. And it's tough to be all those things when you just want to do music, right?
Right.
I run into that all the time.
Yeah, you're exhausted by the time you get to making music. You're like, man,
and I mean,
energy left for it.
So. Even with passionate DJ, like I love doing this, but it does take away a lot of my time from doing the DJing and the production that I'm doing it for.
Itself.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it
takes,
itself,
right.
I don't want to say all my time, but it takes all of my time that I would be doing that.
The lion's share of it.
Yeah, and I definitely empathize with people who complain about, like, I just want to play music. I just want to show up and do my gig and get my check or my $50 or whatever it is and go home.
Well, the secret is that's what we all want.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to do more, I think, in my opinion. You have to be willing to go that extra mile to ascend.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, we've all got to hustle a little bit or we're not going to get anywhere, it seems.
Yes.
So what kind of hustle are you seeing from members of FLP? I mean, do you have any success stories? Or I know it's pretty early, so I don't want to kind of throw you under the bus, but...
That's a good question. So I guess you could look at my friends DJ Squared, Dan Richardson, Dennis Minton, Squigs, Isis Azarine, Aza, and Barry Leonard, who I mentioned earlier.
A lot of members of our group in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And so they had all kind of come together and met, I guess, through FLP. And they formed their own collective called the Techno House Collective.
Oh, cool.
THC. And it's like, that's cool. I want that fluidity again, you know, that you're a member of 14 different crews and it's like whack-a-mole. It's like, where do you pop up? Well, now they had an event at the Mockbee, which is a really popular and hot venue in Cincinnati, where some of them played there, and then prior to that they opened for Codes at the Mad Frog, and so all of them played under the same roof. And that was like a really exciting time for me. I wasn't able to make the show, but I was just thrilled to see that happen, that those relationships get so solid.
It's not cliquey if all the groups hang out with each other, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's, again, that amorphous.
Yeah. So one of the things that I saw in the group, I'm shifting gears a little bit here, but you were working on a contract. Will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing there? Just because I want to share with the listening audience kind of what you're doing to help these people out.
So I work at a law firm called Graydon in Cincinnati, and I work as an admin. So I'm basically like a paralegal. But this was as a client of the firm, Fresh Local Producers. I created an Ohio LLC. I think it's either trademarking or somehow getting intellectual property protection for it. And as I'm going through these processes, I'm trying to be transparent about them. So I'm trying to share them with others so that they, again, learn and they can see what something might look like should they want to do it for their own purposes. And the latest iteration of that was, this is not something that I want to be public yet. I don't want it for the benefit of every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but I want it, again, with the relevance test, to be helpful to artists.
For your peeps.
For the peeps. But the peeps are all artists. You know what I mean? It's not, again, that especially important to emphasize inclusion. So if you're an artist, what a contract like that might look like were you to be booked. And in fact, my friend Alex Harper, who goes by Dante, he has his own Inferno collective in Louisville. He has been a touring Glow Rage artist for the past 3-4 months. Glow Rage is like a paint party.
Yeah, right? Okay. Yep.
He said that contract resembled the one that he signed for Glow Rage. So there's that edification that, okay, this is what you got to prepare yourself for as you ascend, that, when you get to a point where you're expected to bring your own gear, you're expected to be there an hour beforehand for sound check, you're expected to stay until the end to get your payment, so that you don't bail, halfway through the show and take the 50 people you brought with you. I've seen that happen at very prominent nightclubs and very prominent parties, and I'm disappointed to see that. So there's supposed to be something that is, again, transparent and especially mutually beneficial to all the parties, so that there's that point of understanding that they reach prior to even having the night of the event.
Has there been, as you've been going through this process of building this general contract, have you come across anything that has surprised you, or something that people should look out for? Have you learned anything through this process? I have.
There are licenses that are important, and I'm still kind of learning about them.
Like music licenses?
Like ASCAP, I think it is, and BMI. And so that's something that I have to learn more about myself before I can tell people that this is what it is. If
you'd be interested, I might have you back on the show to talk about that.
Yeah,
we get
absolutely.
A lot once you've kind of done the research, because we get a lot of questions about that, and I never really know how to answer them.
Sure, so, but I'm dipping my toe in the water, and so I just see that is, and in fact, one of the more prominent touring electronic acts, there's really no electronic band that compares to them. Their name is Black Signal. They look like Daft Punk and they sound like Nine Inch Nails. They've got motorcycle helmets that light up and instruments that light up and stuff, and they're really dark and intense. So their rider is huge. They've got a lot of gear, that they have to protect. They probably have to insure. And so of all of the DJs, somebody who has a laptop is probably not comparing to somebody who's bringing $10,000 worth of equipment with them. So what will protect the $10,000 of equipment will protect the $1,000 of equipment. And so we're going for that higher end of what is the most fulfills the most need.
Are you, so as you're doing this contract, I mean, is the technical writer part of this contract, or is that a separate document?
Well, we'll see, because I'm trying to not make it too terribly burdensome, like 15 pages long. I'm trying to make it something that's like maybe front and back 2 pages, but digestible. So it's also daunting to read through a contract. Nobody wants to do that. So in a way that's digestible and easy to understand for everybody, and not in legalese.
We'll bring you on next time with Tony, and you guys can talk about this a little bit, because he deals a lot with the technical writers and stuff from headlining artists of festivals and stuff. So maybe you guys could talk shop on that.
I would love that.
That would be cool. What else do you want to? Is there anything else that you want to talk about or plug, or any other topics that you want to share with the audience?
Sure.
It's open mic, man.
Okay. Well, the next showcase, if you will, for FLP is going to be co-presenting Darkotica, which is Cincinnati's longest running industrial goth and club night. And it was formerly at the Dock in downtown Cincinnati on Pete Rose Way. They demolished that club. So it was, I don't know why, maybe to build another skyscraper. But this club now is meeting at Mixwells in the north side neighborhood of Cincinnati, and that's their weekly still. But they've allowed me to kind of come in and get a unique venue. So that's at Urban Artifact, which is a brewery of wild and tart beers. So it's got exotic flavors, and it's part of the Cincinnati brewery culture. And so that's going to be happening on the 29th of November. And,
awesome.
And we'll announce that soon with like an event page, etc. That's public. But I'm very excited to be working with these guys, and my friend Corey Smith, Styclo, who has been producing music for just as many years as I've been in the scene, and he's finally getting to become a resident DJ at multiple like goth or industrial clubs around Cincinnati.
That's interesting, because tomorrow, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our friend Matt Freeman here in Dayton, but he's going to be coming up to talk to me tomorrow and record an episode, and he's going to be talking a little bit about the Asylum reunion shows.
I've heard of Asylum.
Yeah, so Asylum was a club here in Dayton that they played a lot of different types of music, but there was a lot of that goth industrial EBM stuff mixed in with kind of the electronic music of the time. So I think big beat, that kind of stuff, and also just general pop and hip hop stuff. It was kind of a clashing of cultures, it seems like, and it was a little bit before my time, but Matt used to DJ there, and he does these reunion shows pretty frequently, once every year or two, and they always have a great turnout, and it's pretty cool. So I want to make sure I talk to him a little bit about the what's it like to DJ to goth culture. It's definitely a minority compared to the golden era, or whatever you want to call it.
You don't find a lot of fist pumping. Maybe you don't find a lot of shufflers. You might find people who are more shoegaze or something. But
I see a lot of dancers at those shows. It's pretty cool. They get out there and they dance the whole time. It
moves you.
Yeah. So, well, John, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's an open invitation. Definitely come back. We can come back and talk about the contracts or anything else you want. Maybe share some of your music with the audience.
I would love to.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man. And thanks to you. This has been the Passionate DJ Podcast. Peace.